We've been releasing a lot of great new features on AWS Amplify Studio since we launched the developer preview at re:Invent. I wanted to take this opportunity to show you some of these features and build something a little more feature-rich. The first thing that we're going to do is go to the AWS console and go to the Amplify console within there. I'm going to create a new app. I'll call it Tweet. We're going to be building a social media timeline. This will create a studio instance for you in your AWS account. Once your instance is deployed, click Launch Studio, then go to Data under Setup. We'll add two different data models, user and post. Posts are going to have three different fields: content, posted at, which I'm going to change into a date, time, then likes, which is going to be an integer. The user is also going to have three different fields, which will be profile pic, which is going to be a AWS URL. We're going to have handle and then name. Both of those can stay as strings. Let's also add a relationship to them. For the sake of this application, we're going to make it so that each post has one user. Because each post can only be made by one user. If you wanted to build this out into a more complicated application in the future, you'd probably want to do a one-to-many field with each user having many posts and each post having one user. But for the sake of just building a timeline, I'm going to model by my data access patterns and do it this way. Now I'm going to go ahead and save and deploy. Now that our data model is deployed, I'm going to go into the content tab here, and I'm going to create some posts and users. Now that I've created a couple of posts and users, I'm going to go over to the UI library. I'll click Get Started and use the Figma template. I'll go ahead and duplicate this file. There's already the primitives tab, so this is all your buttons and alerts and all those types of things. And then if I go to my components, these are combinations of them. So I'm going to just go into this social B and I'm going to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to delete the liked this, and I'm going to delete just this lorem ipsum. Then I'll delete this button here, and I'm going to delete all of the share actions other than like. Now I'll stretch it out a little bit. I'm going to bold the author text here. And then I'm also going to go ahead and create a group. So I'll select the share in the body. So you can just do Shift and then select to select multiple things. And then Command G will create you a group within Figma. I am going to rename this though to card content. So now I'm going to take this link to this Figma file, go back to Amplify Studio, paste that in, allow access to my Figma account, and this is going to sync in all of my components. I'll go ahead and accept all of them. Then I am going to find my component. So I'm going to search for it here. So it's social B, and I'll click on that. And then I'm going to configure this component. So now we're going to tie some data to this component. And I'm going to go ahead to the lorem ipsum text here. I'm going to set text label. I'll do post.content. I'm actually just going to refresh it so that my data loads in. Now I'm going to select this profile picture and I'll set the image source. I'm going to choose the user.profilepic this time. Then user, I'm going to change to the user.name. Then I'm going to change the likes here to the post.likes all the way down to 0. So sad. So then I'm going to set a text label here. And this time I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do a concatenate. So I'm going to do a hard-coded @ as a constant there. So I'm also going to have the user.handle. So it'll have this nice at that username. I also am going to add a link to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the prop. I'm going to create an as prop. And then I'm going to say A. Then I'm going to set the href to users and then the user.name. And so I'm not actually going to implement routing for this, but what this would do in a full scale application is allow this to link to the user page. So I'd use something like React Router or Next.js for routing, and then I'd be able to link to these pages. Also, you'll notice on Twitter that there's this nice little hover animation whenever you hover over a tweet. It goes to light gray. So I'm going to go ahead and implement that too. So I'm going to take this card content right here, and I'm going to do an on mouse enter. And then I'm going to add an action. I'll do modify element property. I'll choose the card content here. And then my prop is going to be the background color. And then I'm going to do, so that'll be my light gray right there. Anybody else always have to count how many zeros there are in a hex code. Okay, so then I'm going to add a second one, and I'm going to do on mouse leave. And I'll do modify element properties. I'll do the card content. And then I'll set the prop background color to transparent. So now I have both of those effects. So I can hover over it, it turns to gray, and then I mouse out and it goes back to white. So now I get to write some local code. I'm going to create a React app. Now I'm going to cd into that directory that I created, and I'm going to install AWS Amplify and AWS Amplify UI React. Now if I go back to Studio, there's this local setup instructions, and I'm going to copy and paste this. I'll choose my text editor, JavaScript, React, source build, all these defaults here, so I just can press enter. Now I'm going to open up my text editor, and I'm going to go into the source directory and my index.js file. In here, I'm going to first import the Amplify CSS. I'm also going to import config from the AWS exports. I'll import Amplify from AWS Amplify, and then I'll run amplify.configure on that config object. And this will just tie my front end to my back end. I'm also going to import the Amplify provider component, and I'll wrap my app in this. This will just style my application. I also am going to go into my index.css file and paste in a font family. You can find this at ui.docs.amplify.aws. That's a lot of subdomains. And on there, there's a getting started guide, and it will have a suggested font for you. So now I'm going to go to my app.js, and we're going to write our logic within here. I'll go ahead and remove the logo and the CSS file. I'm going to import data store from AWS Amplify. And I'm going to clear out most of the stuff here. And then I will also import post and user from .models. So Amplify, when you run that Amplify pull command, runs a lot of code generation. So you'll see this models directory with your different model files in there that represent your data schema that you created within Studio. There's also UI components, so you can see the React generation of the components that you created. I'm also going to import use effect and use state from React. So I'm going to go now into my app component, and I'm going to create a function in order to pull all my posts. So I'm going to create a state field with posts and set posts, and it will be set to an empty array by default. I'm going to write this asynchronous function here, get posts. And then I will do await data store.query, and I'll get all my posts. Then I will run the set post function on my data. Now I'm going to create a use effect that calls that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my component, and I'm going to map through those posts. So I'm going to do social B, and I'm going to need to import that from my UI components. And this will need to be wrapped in curly JavaScript code here. So the social B, and I can open this to confirm, but it's going to take a user and a post. So my post is going to be my post. I'm looping through those, and then each post will have a user attached to it because it's a one-to-one field. So I'm going to say my user is my post.user. I also need a key since I'm looping through here, so I'm going to do a post.id. Now let me run my React server and see what happens. I made a typo. I need a from right here. This is what happens when you write too much code without testing it, friends. I also accidentally imported this social B right there, so I'm gonna delete that. Now that I'm done fixing my silly mistakes, you can see that I have this Twitter here with all my different tweets, and I can hover on them as well. The last thing that I want to do for this tutorial is to implement an event so that I can actually increase the number of likes when I click on one of these hearts. So something really cool that you can do is pass in overrides to these generated components. They're just React code. There's nothing special about them. In fact, the React code is really nice. It feels like code that a person would write. If I open up my social B component, you can see that each item has this overrides function, and it has an argument to that. And you can pass in this as a key if you want to override some sort of property for that item. These match the names that you gave to elements within Figma. I'm going to do this overrides here, and it takes an object, and I'm going to do the overrides for share, and I'm going to pass an onClick to that, which is going to be a function. I'm going to do an e.prevent default to prevent the page from refreshing. And then I'm going to do const post to change, which is going to be await data store.query for the post, and I'm going to use the post's ID. So in this loop, this post is in scope, so I'm just going to use that. And I need to make this asynchronous. Then I'm going to do await data store.save, post.copy of the post to change. So I'm gonna make a copy of that post to change. It takes a callback function with the argument updated, and then updated.likes plus equals 1. So now if I click on the heart and then refresh the page, you can see that the like happens. But I want to have this update dynamically. So I'm also going to pass the get posts as another prop to this overrides. And then I'll call this get posts function right here. So now it's gonna update dynamically, and now I have a timeline that you can hover over different items, you can link to different pages as well. I haven't actually implemented routing for this app, so it doesn't really work, but the linking does work. If you have any feedback whatsoever on Amplify Studio, I would love to hear it. We're still in developer previews, and so I would love to hear what you're building, what you're running into, and how you like it. See you in the next video.